Welcome to the Innovative University's Global Webinar Series. Here, guests at the helm of institutions that may change how we understand the practice of higher education in the future, answer questions from us and from you. As usual, our hour-long webinar will begin with a short introduction about today's case, Addis Ababa University, and continue with a hands-on discussion about how it operates and how you may implement some of its approaches at your institutions. If you have a question, please share it in the Q&A section of Zoom. Behind the mic, we've got Isak Frumin and I co-hosting the steering committee, helping us select the cases to feature, and Salma Sabai making the show happen. All webinar recordings are available on YouTube and are shared with LinkedIn by Isak and me. Now, can I have the next slide? So I'm delighted to present our today's guest, Ababao Adamo, Professor of Higher Education and Director of Quality Assurance and Risk Management at Addis Ababa University. Ababao, the floor is yours. You are muted.
Thank you, Dara. Thanks so much. So to begin my presentation, let me give you a little bit highlight of Addis Ababa University. So it's the first and the largest university in Ethiopia, which was established in 1950 with 33 students and 9 faculty, which are all foreigners. But currently we have about 34,000 students, 3,000 faculty, and about 3,500 administrative workers. But these two figures, the faculty and the admin, would reduce after the reform. And the main campus is located in the former, what we call Gannatalul Palace. It was a palace of Emperor Haile Selassie. So Addis Ababa University has gone through different reforms and transformation, and it also have 4 names. Initially, when it was established in 1950, it was Addis Ababa University College, and then it becomes Haile Selassie First University. That's the name of His Emperor Haile Selassie. And then very briefly, when the military regime came to power in 1974, it was called National University. And afterwards, it has been named Addis Ababa University, which is still now the name that we are using. After the reform, we have currently 8 colleges across 10 campuses and 7 research institutions. Initially, AU was established to produce some highly skilled professionals in the field of sciences and social science, particularly teachers and civil servants. So it only have 2 faculties, Faculty of Art and Faculty of Sciences. If we look at the trajectories of Addis Ababa University, its development is very incremental or gradual. Until it have only undergraduate in the 1970s, starts with masters, and later with PhD. You have some innovative features in the last 7 decades. One of its main feature is being a pioneer role in Ethiopian higher education institution or in the Ethiopian higher education sector. It has been also one of the main, or it used to be also the only strong research and graduate training system throughout the country when the other universities were not established. Its faculty and the university itself have served as a national policy advisory role for the Ministry of Education and also other ministries. And it's been academic freedom and intellectual leadership has been an academic ethos initially in the 1950s and 60s, where universities have been a significant contributor to the political and social development of the country, and have also gone through many timely reforms. So generally, AAU have immense contribution in terms of educational, societal, economic, and politics of the country. Just to mention a little bit notable alumni, in the last close to 100 years, about 96 years, Ethiopia have had only 5 leaders. Emperor Haile Selassie, then the Derg regime Mengistu Haile Mariam, the late Meles Zenawi, then Haile Mariam Desalegn, and the current PM Abiy Ahmed. So the two of them didn't went to university, but the three of the other prime ministers are alumni of AAU in terms of from political perspective. But AAU also have many renowned scientists. I just mentioned only one here, who is a known medical scientist who discovered Pratilulama, medicine, a treatment for bilharzia. So this is in a nutshell how AAU looks like, very high level presentation. Over to you, Dara.
I think that has been the shortest presentation in the history of our webinar, which gives us a very significant space for discussion. Isak, do you want to start?
Yes, thank you for this kind of bird eye view. I have one factual question again about the development. 10 campuses, all 10 are in Addis Ababa, or there are in different places, and what does it mean? And second, what is the place of University of Addis Ababa among other universities in Ethiopia? That's a couple of factual questions for now. Yeah.
Thank you, Isaac. Yeah, so AAU have 10 campuses. 9 of them are located in the city of Addis Ababa, and the agriculture and veterinary medicine campus is located some 25 kilometers out of Addis in a city called Bishoftu or Debre Zeit. AAU, as you can imagine, it's a flagship university, so it ranks first in any of the criteria that you may think of. And if you look at the very recent international ranking, which I'm not convinced about when interested in, AU ranks first not only in Ethiopia, but also in East Africa and 13th in the continent.
I see. So in this case, it's quite logically to have this university as, in a sense, very traditional, especially taking into account that all first professors were foreigners. So it looks like it's logical, but from our previous discussions, you mentioned that the University of Addis Ababa is trying to be innovative. So could you tell more about these innovations and in what sense you want to try to be innovative? And is it, again, if you are a leader for the whole country system, it's dangerous to be innovative because all country looks at you.
Thank you. I mean, there have been different academic programs and system reform at our university in the last 7 decades. So this is not the first time that AU have gone through reform or transformation. What probably makes the current reform and transformation unique is that potentially its breadth and also the perspective and the approach that are guided by the recently granted autonomy. So a transformation guided by autonomy. It's an overdue transformation, I would say, because if I correctly remember, the process began in 2019 when the Ministry of Education have established what it calls Revitalization Study Committee.
Mhm.
So, which is conducted in that revitalization committee. Its assignment was to conduct an assessment and to identify and guide the transformation and the reform of AAU after its autonomy. But most of the process was, to be honest, carried out in the last 2.5 years, even though it starts in 2019. So the reform and transformation, it involves working at multiple levels and sometimes simultaneously and often consecutively or sequentially. Just let me give you an example. When AU started the current transformation, it prioritized revising and producing some policy and strategic documents that guide other reforms of the university. For example, the University Senate legislation, which we consider as the main institutional policy document, the strategic plan, which clearly states the vision and mission of the university, and the Human Resource Directive. For instance, these three documents are very important on how you look or take the transformation that took the other 2 years. And second, after developing all these strategic and important policy documents, the university initiated the review of academic programs and research institutes. This was a very, very important stage because it informs the institutional structure and the kind of human resource that you want to have in your revised or re-innovated university. And consequently, or thirdly, the university developed the organizational structure based on the study and also the program review and research research institute revision, and also the required human resource across the academic and non-academic units. And finally, I think at the end of last year, November, December, we carried out redeployment of faculties and administrative staff. So the process was not easy because it's not easy. It's not when I was saying the process was not as easy as I'm saying it now. And you can imagine, I would say it was very engaging, overwhelming, and time consuming. And there are about 8 research universities which has been in the process of being granted an autonomy, and they are closely following AAU. So AAU knows this, and that's what makes it a little bit difficult for AAU not to make, or to blunder it, or to make a significant weakness in transforming the universities. And generally, I would say at AAU, transformation is still ongoing. It's a complex process, which is approached gradually, and it's a little bit learning driven rather than as a one-time event. I think it's important also to mention here, if you happen to come to AAU, particularly in the main campus, there is what we call Ras Makonnen Hall. And there is an inscription written in the gate of that hall in his language. It says, which literally means prove all things, hold fast that which is good. So the university should continue proving all things that the academic unit and institution and the system levels, if they are great and still contribute to achieving its mission and vision. Yes, it's very difficult to be innovative and go through such kind of transformation when you knew that the whole, almost, let's say, the whole country and other public universities are looking on what you are doing, and when other considers you as role model and the leader. But that's what it is. It's a part of the life of AAU.
Yes, but what the whole country is watching, what you said, what you are doing, but what are you doing exactly? What you change? So if you say we had this before 2019 and we have this now, what name a few things, please, that that were changed from the initial stage to the current state. Yes.
Okay. For instance, before the reform, we used to have about 700, close to 700 academic programs at bachelor, master's, and PhD program. We have merged, we have consolidated, we have integrated, and some of the program have been ceased. So through these approaches, we were able to reduce the academic programs close to 450. And the number of colleges that we have is also about more than 10, about 13. Now, some of the colleges have been merged to be more effective and efficient. For instance, the College of Education and Behavioral Studies, in its former name, now becomes College of Education and Language Studies, because there was a college of language studies, journalism, humanities, which has been divided into two, and some part went to College of Social Science, Arts, and Humanities, and the language part became part of the College of Education. So I just mentioned this one, but there is a significant reduction in number of colleges in terms of also research institutions. The university were not able to carry or to continue with those research institutes which have not been very productive or which have been doing something not related to their research mission. So most of research institutions have been engaging also in academic mission of the university, which was initially been the mission given to colleges, not to the research institutes. So some of the research institutes have been also closed, merged, and also new research institutions and centers have been also established. Redeployment of academic staff have been also carried out. So academic staff have been moved to college departments where they would be more productive rather than where they would give like basic or kind of common courses. And in the coming months, we would also see some academic universities, academic staff will be potentially leaving the university if there are no space for them. And the same would happen to administrative staff. And the most interesting part of this reform is in Ethiopia, particularly among public universities, they were not privileged to manage their own internal affairs. For instance, human resource. It is being governed by Ethiopian civil service implemented. And the procurement, there is what the public procurement agency where you have to, if you want to buy a laptop, you cannot go and your procurement office cannot go buy a laptop from the market. It must go through this government process. But now all this has become history as a result of the autonomy and the transformation that we have gone through. So with accountability, the university can manage its own procurement, its own finance, it can use its own internal resources, it can manage its own HR, which has not been the case in the past. So there are these kind of changes that happen since the transformation.
Okay, Dara, over to you.
So observing a lot of curriculum transformation and organizational structure transformation processes lately around the world. And obviously, when we are talking about curriculum transformation, there are some really famous cases, some of which we have covered, like Tec de Monterrey famously transformed its whole approach to the curriculum. And just recently, I counted over 10 institutions in the UK that are going through large-scale curricular reforms. So what typically happens in these situations is the joy and excitement that administrative and academic staff feel about the process. Because obviously it's wonderful when somebody is imposing new frameworks on you. So how are you tackling resistance to change in this particular case?
That has been also the case at AAU. Particularly in a country like Ethiopia, where we have so much attachment to the academic program that we have, because For some people, it's a place where they make a living for. So they don't want that territory to be touched. But when you are a university leader, you separate that kind of sentiment and you focus on why you have those academic programs. So you have academic programs and curriculum only to produce highly skilled human resource that can potentially contribute to the development of the country. And for that, you need academic staff, which is secondary. So you will have academic staff and students when you have the curriculum. So initially there was resistance, but the blessing in disguise was there were also faculties which have been longing for this to happen. Some of them have been tired of having this all the curriculum which has not been as such transformative, which they also consider are not properly addressing the interest of the industry or the broader society and the students. So we used all those opportunities, and initially we have come up. We didn't say we are going to revise the curriculum. We have initially get a consciousness among the faculty the importance of transforming our curriculum, and for a reason of ABCD. Once we get that buy-in, then we want to bring them also on board rather than a top-down approach. We try to use a bottom-up approach. So we asked every academic unit to assess their own curriculum rather than us assessing their curriculum as from central unit. So each academic unit have revised, and they also send us what they think would work in the future. Taking that as an input, we also established a task force, which includes faculty members from I would say from all colleges at that time. And then based on what each academic unit assessed itself, and also our assessments through our task force, we came up with a kind of, results which shows that what needs to be done to different academic programs or curriculum. And we also used, we intentionally developed the software, which we call it APMAS, Academic Program Management System, which helped us in looking at duplication, similarities across different academic programs. A very simple example is, there are food engineering in one faculty, food science in another college, food and development in another again college, food and health. So such kind of things we want to promote also at the same time interdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity. So taking the interest of each department or academic unit and our finding, and with the support of the software, we were able to make a decision whether a certain academic curriculum could sustain or should be paused for a while, or integrate, or merge, or consolidate. That's how we have gone through, and somehow I don't think there are too much problem even after we announced the outcome of the revision. Getting buy-in was the very important strategy that we used, and bringing themselves, the academic units on board at the same time.
And when you say an academic unit, do you mean a department or college?
Yes. I purposely use academic unit because department and centers have been running curriculum. So initially it's departmental, but there are also centers who have academic programs. That's why I want to use academic unit instead of department.
Yeah, so it's a bit more inclusive.
Yeah.
So I have one follow-up question to this, and
Me too. Yeah, okay.
I also have many follow-up questions to the initial presentation, but we have time, thankfully. So from what you are telling us this is certainly a curriculum transformation. This is certainly org structure reform. And also, I reckon a large HR reform as well, or rather talent reform, as I don't like the word resources that's hiding in HR. But overall, at the moment, it seems like it's more of a very large scale, but still spring cleaning exercise. But you mentioned that the original driver was to ensure curriculum's adequacy to the needs of society and economy. So, what are the next steps? What are you going to do in the next cycle of this?
Yeah, related to the academic curriculum, the next step that we took, and which is still under process, was if you look at the history of Ethiopian public universities, including the university in the curriculum that they have been accredited by the jure, that means by proclamation. So we have never had an opportunity to seek or an accreditation from the accreditation authority, which is currently Education and Training Authority. But now the Education and Training Authority have been given the mandate to accredit all academic programs across the public and private universities. So as the flagship public universities, we want to abide by their rules. So we are trying to we have already initiated the undergraduates, all undergraduate academic programs to be accredited by the Education Training Authority. So far, we were able to submit 56 undergraduate academic programs to be accredited by the agency. And the agency have also somehow its own human resource capacity, expertise, and experience in accrediting public university academic programs. So we were not able to go as many master's and PhD programs to be accredited, but we are working closely with Education and Training Authority in a way how we can also get accreditation for our master's and PhD program. We are also anticipating to get accreditation for some of our master's program internationally. So the next step regarding academic curriculum is getting accreditation. But since last year, we have been accepting students based on the newly approved, Senate approved academic programs.
But still, just a clarifying question to this follow-up question that I've asked. What are the actual changes to pedagogy that you are implementing?
In terms of pedagogy, there may not be that much change because initially also we couldn't find that much during our review. We couldn't find that much problem that goes to the extent of changing the pedagogical approach that the university has been doing. It could vary from department to department, from faculty to faculty, but the university always promotes student-centered learning, practice-based oriented learning, problem-based, inquiry-based. So these are the approach. So it's up to the unit to choose what best suits to their context. So honestly speaking, we re-promoted the importance of pedagogy in terms of achieving the graduate profiles indicated in each and every academic curricula. But we didn't put it that much because we are not that much dissatisfied or we didn't find that much obstacles in terms of pedagogy.
Mm-hmm. Isaac?
Yes, in fact, to continue your line of questioning, look, Abeba, when I looked at your university website, I did feel that indeed this is one of the leading universities for Africa. And it's quite obvious that Africa needs not nationally oriented, or I don't know, ethnically oriented higher education system, but it has special conditions, resource constraint, both financial and human resource. Um, so my question is, did you try at uh, during this transformation of your flagship university, did you try some innovations that are unique for your university and let's say for Africa? Or you tried, and it's very good, to compete with the best world-class universities, but essentially, like by the way, like Chinese universities, you tried to implement in African conditions the kind of global model of research university. Is there such thing like African model of research university?
If, if I have to be honest, we didn't come up with any model which we can call an African model of being a research university, but what we are trying or may prove is how to become autonomous, research intensive university in Africa with a resource constrained context. Would it be possible to become research intensive university in a research fund constrained context? Because if you look at AAU, one our main ambition is to become one of the 10 premium research universities in the whole continent. So it's not easy to be an autonomous and research intensive university in developing higher education ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult. We totally understand that. I see it also both as a privilege and also a profound responsibility. Because when you become autonomous, it's a privilege. When you knew that you are competing with some other African universities and universities in the rest of the world with significant resource, then it's quite a big ask for AAU to compete both at continental and global level.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't come up with a certain model which makes us very competitive, but we aspire and we want to remain as competitive as possible. And let me explain why I'm saying this. First, we consider autonomy as a freedom with accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives us the freedom as AAU, as I was mentioning, to design our own academic program, research priority, our human resource, so and so on. But the problem is we should also know that we will remain still accountable, not only to the government, to our own university community, and also to the society. So how do you create a delicate balance between such a freedom and accountability? And when you have small amount of fund as intermediary between your autonomy and your accountability? That's a big question that we need to answer probably in the coming 5 years, let alone coming up with a certain model. It's essential, but not easy to be a research intensive university in Africa, like in countries like Ethiopia particularly, because on the one hand, as a research university, we are expected not only to publish more, which is evident now at Addis Ababa University, but also to fulfill responsibilities that the country expects from a research university, such as producing knowledge, addressing the national problems through research, and so on. And also, AU has, again, still the responsibility to train the next generation of scholars and to be competitive at continental and global level. But on the other hand, let me tell you this, what makes it difficult for AU. it's difficult to achieve this in the context where the country allocates less than 0.3% of its GDP for research, where there is literally no national research fund which universities and research centers can apply. So in the other parts of the world, particularly in the Western countries or China, the country that you mentioned, even in some African countries like Kenya, probably South Africa, Egypt, they have NRF. And universities have the potential to apply there, and faculties know where to apply, which is not the case in Ethiopia. And what makes it worse even in Ethiopia is universities are not even allocating, they are allocating less than 5% of their national budget or annual budget for research. And there are also challenges associated with infrastructure and modern, what we call core laboratories. So working in such a context would require be more strategic to know where you need to invest. I don't think AU would continue investing in everything. It needs to be very strategic if we want to continue to be competitive and to be productive. So in a nutshell, in a context, I think it's important to balance ambition with reality. So we are ambitious enough to compete at global level, at continental level, and we may come up with a certain model that can help us with that, which we don't have yet. But there could be also different strategies to cope with these challenges. But some of them could be building strategic international collaborations, strengthening internal research management to be more efficient with the resource that you have, and focusing also, as I was saying, focusing on areas of comparative advantage rather than trying to do everything at once or trying to be the best in everything. We cannot be the best in engineering, medicine, language, education, political science, or everything. So it's a matter of choice for AAU to identify its comparative advantage. And Isaac, the other thing that I would like to mention is what it means to be, or how other universities in the country perceive AAU. Not only the challenge which I was mentioning. We have this burden of proving as a universities that it's possible to be research university, to be a model university, to compete at continental and global level, even with limited resource. As I mentioned in my introductory presentation, AU is the oldest and largest university in the sector and plays a leading role. So for AU, this role is particularly significant because it has historically been the flagship institution. It carries symbolic and structural weight. Other universities which have been also designated as research university based on the categorization or differentiation of universities in Ethiopia, which I didn't mention, let me mention it here. Ethiopia have categorized its university in 2020 as research university, University of Applied Science, comprehensive university, science and technology university, specialized university. So AU and other 8 universities have been designated as research university. And those other research universities are also on their way to be granted autonomy. So they are closely following AU's progress, reform, research output, and its innovation. I would also say AU often sets academic standards that others observe and often emulate. And this creates, as I was saying, a burden to prove, to demonstrate that autonomy can lead to excellence, or institutional reforms can succeed with a proper plan and implementation with limited resource. And how to succeed as a research university in a resource and infrastructure constrained context is an assignment for AU to prove. We are just beginning. So it's something that we need to deal with. So in many ways, AU function as a reference point, particularly at national level. And we are not afraid of also competing at continental level, which is still good when it comes to ranking. Its success, strengths, and in the higher education system. while its failure can also discourage. I need to mention this, that our failure can also discourage ongoing reforms and transformation efforts in other public universities across the country.
Okay, Dara, one just final for this part. So I got point. Your point is very interesting. So we talk about innovations that can help to stay as autonomous research university in resource constrained environment. And you already mentioned, and you said that uh, your university has to prove it, but you already have mentioned one idea, the concentration. You said we cannot do everything. So that's, and probably this idea of concentration is behind your optimization program, because indeed you moved from 700 to 400 programs, etc. So what are other ideas to be successful research university in this environment under these conditions, besides concentration?
Besides concentration, the other strategy that the university has followed is we knew that there is a significant budget limitation. What the university wants to have as an annual budget and what the university gets from the government is incomparable. So to not to completely address the budget issue, but at least to complement it, the university is trying to be a little bit innovative in a way of how we can diversify our source of funding. So for that, it established endowment office. It's trying to come up with a business model where the university can also have a business. It's newly introduced PhD, which has never been the case in any other public universities in our higher education history. So it's AU which is introducing tuition fee for university students. So currently we are introducing such kind of innovative approach. It's innovative for Addis Ababa University and it's innovative for Ethiopia. It may not be the case for other countries. So AU is trying to get as much money or funding as possible through business model, through endowment, and other potential sources. So AU is looking into how we can diversify our source of funding, including the tuition fee, and also how we can manage our own internal resources. When I say our own internal resources, again, it's a matter of optimization. And there were cases where university researchers were not happy bring research to the university because of the administrative and financial bureaucracy. So many faculties were taking their project to other less bureaucratic institutions outside the university. Now the university came up with an idea on how to entertain and make sure the research project management will be more effective so that we can attract our own faculty to bring as many research projects as possible, because that benefits the university in terms of overhead. It contributes to the university's reputability and enhances its partnership. So there are these kind of elements here and there where the university is triggering, ensure to get more funding, to be more productive and competitive. These are a few which that comes to my mind.
Thank you, Dara.
I have several follow-up questions to different parts of the conversation. So apologies that I'll be moving like a checker on a board. So talking about the original model, I've always been curious, and I believe I asked you that. Maybe I regretted that I didn't after our conversation, but still. So Ethiopia has a very rich tradition of traditional education, Jewish education at first, even before Christian education, then a very old and well-established tradition of Christian education, and later also Islamic education. Has there been attempts to revive that, some of the pedagogical approaches or mindset development or anything else in modern Ethiopian universities and in AAU in particular? And why not, if not?
Interesting question. But let me say this. As far as my reading is concerned, I'm not sure about the contribution of the Jewish education in Ethiopia, but absolutely right that the Orthodox Tewahedo Church have had a significant impact even in the current modern education, what we call modern education, and also the madrasa have also contributed to this. Ethiopia, as an ancient country which has accepted Christianity in the 4th century BC and Islam in the 7th century, before what we call the current Western or modern education. We only had those traditional education, if we call it traditional, if it's not belittling by being saying traditional, because many of the officers used to come through those systems. So they have contributed, religious education have contributed significantly to, to, to the current modern or Western type of higher education. So I don't see any of those being taken directly, but there is still many people looking for and arguing for AAU, not only for AAU, for the whole education system to go back and look for indigenous knowledge, indigenous pedagogy, so and so on. But I need to be honest here. So far, even though it has been mentioned also in the education and training policy, the importance of indigenous knowledge, even though there are so many academic papers that has been presented in many fora, there is no substantial or clear directive and framework where we can say there is an initiative to bring that to enhance the current or the modern educations from taking lesson from what we have had in the traditional education or in the former church or madrasa education. So there is that kind of sentiment. There is an academic debate, but it has not been substantiated in a kind of framework or in a kind of policy which would contribute to strategically think about it and implement it. This is all what I can say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Another question, going way back to the very beginning of your presentation. So you said that the reform and transformational processes started again to ensure a better contact between what education offers and what the society needs. What kind of challenges are you working with? What gaps are you trying to close?
Um, there are so many gaps, particularly when it comes to academic programs. We've been criticizing ourselves, saying that academic programs should not be hostage of wage. That means if we cannot say there is irrelevant academic program. Relevance depends on the context. There might be relevant at some point, but if there is no interest from the industry or the society having a graduate in a certain field, then we should not continue working or accepting students in those programs because ultimately we are contributing to unemployment. But some faculties, as I was saying, they want to maintain those academic programs because they would survive if that program exists. So there was this kind of challenge. But whether we are successful or not, we will look in the near future, because the new program has been revised and it's been only a couple of years. But the main issue that we want to address is, there is, in many academic papers, even the ministries, not only Ministry of Education, other ministries have been, and also development partners and donors, World Bank, everyone is saying that there is a mismatch between skills needed by the industry and the society and the graduate that universities produce. So we are part of the system, and it also concerns us. So we want to address this gap, the skill mismatch. So we want to produce graduates who have the knowledge, the skill, and the attitude that the industry or whatever the sector is looking for. And by addressing this, we want to also contribute and enhance graduate employability in the country, which is very poor. But I'm saying this, I'm not representing, what I'm going to say is not the voice of my university. It's me, Ababa, as a higher education person. Even though we produce a highly skilled human resource, I don't think the country have an industry that absorbs a graduate with such a high skill competence. Because if you look at most of the industries that we have in Ethiopia, they are not knowledge and skill intensive. That's why many university graduates are not employed, because they may say that there is a skill mismatch. Yes, there might be a skill mismatch, but the mismatch is because what we produce is for industries that believes in knowledge and skill. But most of the industries that we have, as I was saying, are not knowledge and skill intensive, which requires university graduates. Over to you.
I just have one more, no, two more follow-up questions. Going back to the transformation process itself, you mentioned that the process is quite collegial. Faculty and staff are represented in the task force. And I also remember that in our conversation in Addis Ababa, you mentioned that there is quite a lot of autonomy given to academic units in deciding what they're going to do. So kind of like authority in the box. They have to do something. They cannot just leave things as they are, but they can come up with the solution themselves. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think it might be useful for our audience to understand how that can work.
Yeah, it's a matter of, again, getting a delicate balance between autonomy as an academic unit or department level, and also, contributing towards senior leadership or central level would come up with an idea. So yes, the intention of this transformation is to make the smallest unit in the university academic structure, the department or the centers, be more autonomous. For instance, the university or the central office cannot interfere in the development of any academic program. It's up to the academic unit to make sure the relevance and quality of any existing academic program, or still they are opening, some of them are also proposing to come up with new academic programs. So it's up to the department or the center or the academic unit to decide what very good or best or an excellent curricula or academic programs looks like. But the university also, or when I say the university, the central office should also have a say on that, because, as I was saying, AU is one of the universities which have constrained fund So whenever you propose a certain academic program, it means that you are also looking for or asking for more resources, because it may not be resources intensive, but still you are asking for a certain resources. So there should be kind of consensus on this. Otherwise, it's up to the department or the unit to choose the curriculum, the pedagogy, the content, and how to assure quality. It's also up to the department to hire or fire the faculty that's important or which they think is contributing to the existence of the program or the department. So yes, there are something that the university wants to protect, because unless you have a fund, even though certain academic programs are important, you may not be able to launch it. There is no academic program, at least to the extent of my knowledge, which has been said no, there is no resource. But there might be a time where the university may say, yes, we know this is relevant, this is important, but we need to wait a little bit more. Or the university may say, yes, you come up with this academic program, which we totally accept, but would it be possible also to merge, integrate, or consolidate it with this one? Because the university aspires to have more interdisciplinary academic program than those silo academic programs, which does not that much contribute to the industry. So there must be a negotiation and renegotiation between the freedom that the academic units have and also what the university wants to have and aspires to be. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Isaac, we have time for one more question before the final
I
one.
guess that we have time just for final question. Yes, and let's.
All right then. So, Ababa, as advertised, we have a traditional question that we always ask at the end of our webinar. What advice, and I will modify it a little bit to match the case. What advice would you give other university leaders that are transforming curricular and organizational structures at their universities, which is notoriously difficult to do?
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. If you allow me, I think I missed one thing, which, as you know, I'm working as also administrator as a quality assurance director. And I just want to say a few things about to our audience, how AAU is trying to, balance the expansion, which has been the trend of AAU for the last 7 decades, and quality, which will be the future trend of AAU. So let me say this. If we look at what has happened over the past 7 decades at AAU, and of course in many other universities, balancing expansion with quality has been, learning process shaped by mainly the national demands and institutional reflections. As I was saying, for many years, AAU has been the only university in the country. So expansion was a national responsibility for AAU. It significantly expanded its academic programs, postgraduate training, and research centers, particularly in the past 3 decades since 1980s. I argue that this expansion was not accidental because it was a response to urgent national needs. The government have been establishing new universities from 2 public universities. It went to 47 public universities, 5 private universities, and more than 400 other types of higher education institutions in the private sector. So the country required highly qualified academic staff who can work in all these public universities. And AU have the main responsibility in producing faculties that would potentially work in those public and private universities. Many research centers were also established at AU because there was an ambition from the government And the university also wants to address policy challenges. It wants to generate knowledge and, and strengthen Ethiopian research profile. Here, I think I need to make clear that I'm not saying that all research centers have been successful. I'm just justifying the rationale behind all those research centers, which the university were now reconsidering emerging and remerging. So the rapid expansion also introduced several limitations, including the one which I was mentioning, proliferation and the duplication of academic programs, which in turn raised concerns about quality, and it also hindered advancement of interdisciplinary initiative. So at certain point, AAU recognized this limitation, which undermines quality and also long-term excellence. So currently, I would say AAU has intentionally paused significant expansion, especially in launching new academic programs and research centers. So the strategic direction that we are following is now shifted from expansion to excellence. That's why, in principle, I would say in principle, and I want to emphasize in principle, it emphasizes strengthening the quality of teaching and learning, improving research rigor and impact, and administrative efficiency, and enhancing its internal quality assurance system, rather than expanding units, programs, and structures. So let me come back to the question that you mentioned, the lessons that other universities could potentially take. Thank you. It's also a very interesting question. So the first lesson that other universities could take from AAU could be, reform and transformation should be anchored in genuine institutional self-assessment. I mean, it should not be like any other activities where you want to tick only the boxes, because reform should be evidence-based. It's not reactive. And institutions should be ready and committed to whatever it takes to go through a genuine transformation, because it's not an easy journey. There are so many probably faculties, administrative units, colleges that you may disappoint to achieve what you want to achieve through transformation. So you need to have a very committed leadership. You need to come up with a genuine institutional self-assessment, which takes you what you want to achieve. The second lesson is institutional transformation should follow a contextual logical sequence. I'm emphasizing again contextual logical sequence, because what's logical sequence at AU may not work in other universities. So for AU, the logical sequence was first producing policy documents, then reviewing existing academic programs and research centers, because contributors in or informs the university organizational structure, and then human resource alignment. I think without strategic documents, reform risks inconsistency and fragmentation, at least at AU. And I also believe that in other universities, reform needs to be informed through assessment, and then you should do what needs to be done first. And you should know also what should follow.
Thanks.
The third one is we need to have a clear understanding of important issues. So at least at AU, one of the very important issues for us was there were some people who think that autonomy will take us to the next level of excellence by being autonomous. They think that we would get money. They think that we would be excellent in a year, whatever that excellence could be. However, it's important to know that autonomy does not automatically produce excellence. It could be a means, but it's not an end. So I strongly believe that it must be matched by internal capacity, leadership responsibility, and measurable outcomes. Otherwise, autonomy and reform or transformation even can expose institutional weaknesses rather than strengthening their performance, because you are by your own. Now, for example, we said that we are responsible for the procurement that we do because we are autonomous, And that's also through the reform, we also come up with very interesting procurement policy. If that policy doesn't work, there is no anyone else, third party that you blame. So you are the one who will be blamed, and your witnesses will be exposed not only to the university community, also to the government and others. So it's very important that reform and transformation is not only a matter of structure. You need to have the necessary human resource, which is still a limitation for AAU, the necessary funding and other partnership that makes your transformation or reform a reality. Without that, you have the blueprint, but you may not implement it. And probably from my side, the last and the fourth one, lesson. Again, as I said before, transformation could be gradual. We know it's complex and it's also sometimes overwhelming. So it requires engagement of all university community members in one way or the other. There might be some peer leaders, which you could often see them at the front, but it doesn't mean that others should not be on board. So it should be participatory. It should be, it should be, it requires engagement, it requires learning, it requires adjustment, and it requires also persistence from everyone. Therefore, universities must cultivate a culture of continuous reflection. It's not something that you're done and that's it. You need to test reforms. You need to learn from it, from your experience, and retain what works. So let me conclude this section by saying, you remember the inscription I was mentioning earlier. كلها مكرو وزسناس. Prove all things and hold fast that what is good or which is good. That is an overall epoch of transformation. Thank you.
Thank you. That was comprehensive, I would say. Thank you very much, Ababao, for joining us today and for answering our questions. Dear listeners, next time we are going to be traveling. And by traveling, I mean we are going to explore the Traveling Use Lane International Program, which is done in collaboration with Mondragon University, another interesting case. Traveling programs have proliferated over the last couple of years. So it's Minerva, it's an experiment in South Korea, it's Forward College that we have looked at. But this one has its own very interesting features. So we'll see you on the 13th of March.